Hi, it's Maija here with my first quarterly reads and receipts. So in this video I will go through what I read during the quarter, my TBR count, how I'm doing with my challenges, and I will also choose the next quarter's challenges at the end. I did the 28 manga in 28 days challenge in February, and I will not go through any of those manga volumes here because that's just too much. My TBR count at the start of the quarter was 63 books, and let's start with the reads. Owned physical books that I read this quarter. I started with Harrow the Ninth by Tamsyn Muir, and this is a science fantasy novel. It's the second in the Locked Tomb trilogy. The first one was Gideon the Ninth, which I loved, and this continues the story from Gideon the Ninth, but with a different main character, so we are following Harrow this time. So here we go again, gothic science fantasy with bad jokes. Elaborate writing style, not afraid to add very goth multisyllable adjectives to where a simpler one would do, but on the other hand it wouldn't, because then it wouldn't be the same reading experience. And it's also a slow middle with more action at the end. There's complicated characters that I either love or love to hate, so all of that is very much like in Gideon the Ninth, and I loved every second. Like I said, the focus is on Harrow this time, who is a much more serious main character than Gideon, so there is a tone change there. The book still managed to make me laugh out loud. Harrow was my favorite character from the first book, so I loved following her. This book is very much focused on trauma, but also the quarrels and complicated relationships between either young or ancient immortal necromancers stuck together in a house or a space station, having dinners, training, maybe wanting to murder each other. I was all on board for that. Some people might not be into it, so I guess at this point I'll point to myself and say you must be at least this goth to ride. I gave Harrow the Ninth, like Gideon, 5 stars, and this brings my TBR count down to 62 books. Next I read a book that I've owned for very much longer than Harrow, and that is Heaven's Queen by Bach. This is a science fiction novel, and it is the third and final book in the Paradox trilogy. This is an enjoyable space action romance, and we follow Deviana Morris, or Devi, who is this mercenary who finds out about this galaxy-threatening situation involving aliens, super secret agents, and basically psychic magical girls. So there's a lot going on, and she has to decide where her loyalties lie and what she's going to do about it. There's also a love interest called Rupert, who is this mysterious cook, and their relationship is quite convoluted and difficult during the trilogy. I think I read the first 2 books in 2016, so thankfully I still owned those books and I could flip through them. I started reading this book and then I realized I don't remember what happened in the second book. I spent a day flipping through books 1 and 2 and sort of refreshing my memory, and then I started reading this. And I was right, I didn't remember basically anything that happened at the end of the second book. So there's aliens, action scenes, super soldier agents, romance, magic powers, a universe at stake. It's a very fun ride, with some things in the love story that makes it quite hard to root for the love story. But this series was a fun popcorn read. I gave this one 3 or 3.5 stars. It was quite enjoyable, and my TBR is now 61 books. Next I read 2 physical books that don't alter my TBR count. So first I read Plain Bad Heroines by Emily N. Danforth. This is a gothic horror novel that I bought and read during the first quarter, so that's why my TBR doesn't go up or down. So the background or premise of this book is that in 1902 in Brookhant School for Girls there were 2 schoolgirls in love, and they were obsessed with this particular book. There were tragic deaths, and we follow later on when 3 women who are in a film crew go to the school to film a movie about these girls. In my haul, I think I said that the book the girls were obsessed with was fictional, but it's actually an actual book. It's the story of Mary MacLane. Sorry if you can hear my neighbor's dogs barking. I think 2 of my neighbor's 2 dogs are meeting and playing outside, so I like horror stories that revolve around making a film. But this book wasn't what I expected at all. I still enjoyed reading it, but I thought we would be following 2 timelines with the schoolgirls and then the women who are filming the movie or are in part of filming the movie. And instead, in the past, we are following 2 teachers and not the students. So it doesn't focus on the students' love story, it focuses on the headmistress of the school and her lover or partner. Also, there's the movie production storyline, but it took a long time for them to get to the school and actually start shooting the movie. So most of the book was about the teachers and about these three women before the movie filming started. So I was expecting more like on-set shenanigans and spooky schoolgirl mysteries than what I got. I also wanted a bigger ending with more of a high point than what we got. But still, funnily enough, I enjoyed reading this. It's not what I expected. I wanted something else or something more, but I had a good time reading it. I think the writing style just worked for me. It wasn't very like serious, at least in the modern day part. At times it was quite like funny or quippy, and it also was very easy and quick to read. So, not what I expected, not what I wanted. Still liked reading it. I gave it 4 stars. My TBR count says the same. Then my last read that doesn't affect my TBR count is Agatha Christie's 1-2 Buckle My Shoe, which is a Poirot mystery, and I don't count Poirot if you didn't know. So in this one, Poirot's dentist is murdered. I really enjoyed reading it up until the end, but I didn't like the end resolution because I thought it was a bit ridiculous and there was no way that the reader could have puzzled it out. I still gave it 3 stars. I liked the ride, I didn't like the ending. Sorry about the lighting change, I had to get up and turn on some lights. But now let's move on to the ebooks I read during the first quarter. I'm gonna list them and then tell you some of my favorites. So during the first quarter I read Of Dragons, Feasts and Murders by Aliette de Bodard, which I gave 3 stars. Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher and Paladin's Strength by T. Kingfisher, I gave both of them 4 stars. The Mislaid Magician or 10 Years After by Patricia C. Wrede and Caroline Stevermer, and I gave this one 2 stars. Then I read Phoenix Extravagant by Yoon, which I gave 4 stars. Finally, I read 3 things from Tansy Rayner Roberts. I read Hobgoblin Boots, which was a short story that I gave 3 stars. Death of Snow, which was another short story that I gave 3 stars, and Curse of Bronze, which was a novella that I gave 4 stars. So both of the T. Kingfisher books and 2 of the Tansy Rayner Roberts books were actually books that I got from Patreon. So I'm the patron or Patreon, whatever you want to say, to the 2 authors. I just joined Tansy Rayner Roberts' Patreon and I've been a part of T. Kingfisher or Ursula Werner's Patreon for a long amount of time. And I get all of the ebooks that she self-publishes from that. So I love being her Patreon. Now let's move on to the favorites. So my favorites out of the ebooks I read were Paladin's Grace and Paladin's Strength by T. Kingfisher. So these are high fantasy romance novels about paladins and their love interest. Both of the paladins belong to the same order whose god died. And the first one is about Stephen and Grace. Grace is a perfumier. The second book is about Istvan and Clara, and Clara is a nun or a lay sister of a secretive order. And I liked both of them. You should, I think, read them in order, because even though they have different main characters, different romance storylines, there is like this bigger mystery or killer storyline background of the books that is continues from the first to the second. So I think you should read Paladin's Grace first. I loved the plot of both, but I liked Stephen and Grace a bit better than Istvan and Clara. So even though I like them both, I like the characters a bit more in Paladin's Grace. Paladin's Grace was at times a bit more anxious read than Paladin's Strength, because there's this storyline where Grace has had an abusive partner in the past. So that is something that is delved into. But yeah, 4 stars for both of those. I also really liked Phoenix Extravagant by Yoon, which was a fantasy, a standalone about an artist who ends up working for the colonists. There's also a mechanical dragon, there's a painting as magic, and I like that the main character isn't heroic, like I just want to do art and not get involved, but that changes during the book. And I like that they were a different kind of protagonist. And this one also got 4 stars. And the third thing that I want to mention was Curse of Bronze by Tansy Rayner Roberts, which I also gave 4 stars. So this is a fantasy novella, the first in the Gargoyle Mysteries, and for now it's only available on her Patreon. I think it might be there for a year and then she will release it. So I like that this one was had a fun world, and it was a really quick and entertaining read. So in this one, there's this young woman who is a scholar of magical languages, and she inherits this house full of dangerous artifacts from her curse breaker aunt. So there's all sorts of supernatural creatures in this world, and I really enjoyed reading this story. It was just cozy and fun. I also did finish one owned audiobook during the first quarter, and that is Heartless by Gail Carriger, which was a reread. I gave it 4 stars. I liked it better this time than the first time that I read it. I started this all the way back in November. It's very rare for me to listen to audiobooks, but I finished this. I really like the narrator. Let's move on to library books. I read Tears from the Folly by Peter Aronovich, which is short stories in the Peter Grant universe. I gave this one 3 stars. I read Burning Roses by S.L. Huang, which I gave 4 stars. And I also read some manga leftovers from my challenge in March. So the stuff that I had put on hold at the library, and then they arrived in March and not in time for my February challenge. So those were Witch Hat Atelier Volume 4 by Kamomi Shirahama, which I gave 4 stars. A Bride Story Volume 7 by Kaoru Mori, which I gave 3 stars. The Promised Neverland Volume 1 by Kayu Shirai and Posuka Demizu, which I gave 3 stars. And finally, I read Blank Canvas Volumes 3 and 4 by Akiko Higashimura. I gave Volume 3 4 stars and Volume 4 3 stars. And my favorite of the library books I read was Burning Roses by S.L. Huang. So this puts together the fairy tales and legends of Red Riding Hood and Ho-E the Archer, who like hang out together in their so-called retirement, where they hunt monsters to help people, and we slowly learn both of their backstories. And I liked how Red's backstory mixed together with so many different Western fairy tales. I love that sort of mix-up of fairy tales. I also sort of knew the story of Ho-E the Archer. In this one, she's a woman. I think in a lot of the legends, Ho-E is a man, but yeah, I really like this one. So those were the reads. Now let's move on to the receipts. So first, my quarterly challenges. And they were to finish my current TBR chart challenges. First of those was Book Shown in a Book Haul Revisit video, and I finished that by reading Heaven's Queen by Rachel Bach. And then the second one was Prettiest Cover. And I started but didn't finish Howard's End by E.M. Forster. I'm bit under halfway through currently. I'm finding this quite difficult to read. I have enjoyed both of the Forster books I've read previously, but this one for some reason is just really slow going for me. And my second quarterly goal was to finish at least one series, and I finished the Paradox trilogy by reading Heaven's Queen, and then I also finished the Cecilia and Kate series by reading The Mislaid Magician or 10 Years After by Patricia C. Wrede and Caroline Stevermer, and this one was a disappointment. Like I said earlier, I gave it 2 stars, and I recommend just reading the first book, which is called Sorcery and Cecilia, or The Enchanted Chocolate Pot. It works as a standalone. It's like teen, young adult book. It's an epistolary novel. All of these are epistolary novels. They were written as a letter game between the authors, so both of the authors had their own characters, and they actually sent letters to each other as the characters. And the first one is really good. I can't remember the second one, but I didn't really enjoy it. And then I just didn't care for the third one. I should have not finished it. The characters didn't actually find out anything out for themselves. They just sort of happened to be there when things were revealed or things happened. I just wasn't into it. And also it felt weird that this was a young adult book, or was it a young adult book? Because at this point, both of the characters are married and have children and are older, so they have different sort of problems than in the first book, where they're both teens and have their love stories. So I really, really recommend the Sorcery and Cecilia book, but not the books written after that. Those were the challenges for the first quarter. Did I complete them? And can I buy Yoshi Yoshitani's art book Beneath the Moon? No, because I did not finish Howard's End. This is gonna take me, I think, at least a month more to finish. So let's move on to the yearly challenges. I didn't complete my reread challenge. I didn't even start it. I also have the percent of books bought books read challenge, which is I want to be at 60% at the end of the year, and currently I am at 26%. Then I have the goal to actually read the Dark Magazine issues that I am a subscriber to. This is a horror short story magazine, and I did read January, February and March's issues, so I'm on board. I also continued my Borrow read. This wasn't in my yearly challenges video, but I'm still keeping track of how I'm progressing in the Borrow series, so I read One to Buckle My Shoe. I also did haul books during the first 3 months of the year, so that brings my TBR count up. I hauled, apart from Plain Bad Heroines, which I already read, I hauled Christina Henry's The Ghost 3, which brings my TBR to 62 books. Tanith Lee's Death Master, my TBR is 63 books. M.A. Carrick's The Mask of Mirrors, 64 books. Medusa's Daughters, Magic and Monstrosity from Women Writers of the Fin de Siècle, edited by Theodora Goss, 65 books. And then there's 2 books that don't raise my TBR, so those are the manga volume Versailles of the Dead, volume 2 by Kumiko Suekane, and Mrs. McGinty's Dead by Agatha Christie. As I said, I don't count these. I'm reading these mostly from the library, then I have a list of books on my phone for books that my library doesn't have in English, and whenever I come across one, I read it, and after I am at that part of the series and read it, I get rid of them, I donate them forward. So that's 65 books now, and now we are at the choosing a new quarterly challenge part. First, I will draw a new TBR TARDIS challenge. These are getting quite low. I think there's under 10 here anymore. This one. Released in 2017. That's quite specific, and I think this means I made this TBR chart in 2018. Maybe I should have released last year or released this year, but anyway, released in 2017, weirdly specific. I'm gonna do that. Then a new quarterly specific goal, which is a big one. I want to get my TBR to 55 books by the end of the second quarter. So that is minus 10 books from where I am. I have one cheat for this, and that is The Witness for the Dead by Catherine Addison, which is published at the end of June. So that one, I will be ordering that book. And then I will wait for it to arrive, and it might arrive in time for the end of second quarter. And if it does, I will allow myself to have 56 books if the 56th book is The Witness for the Dead, because I know I'll be buying it and I probably won't have enough time in the quarter to read it if it arrives right at the end. And if I complete these goals, I can get a script membership. So big goals, big rewards. I basically want to read, I finished the Alana series, the Song of the Lioness series by Tamara Pierce, and I want to read the next series written by Tamara Pierce, and my library doesn't have it, so I think I will read it on script. I think I checked that it's there. I'd also really like to read the Grisha trilogy, but my library has so many holes on it because the TV series just came out, so I think script also has the Grisha trilogy by Leigh Bardugo, so those are both series that I don't really want to buy for myself, and it's difficult to get them from the library, or my library just doesn't have them. So a script membership if I'm at 55 books. For a little sneak preview of the challenge in April, I've only managed to finish Shards of Honor, so one owned book, and I am in the middle of The Ghost Tree and Howard's End. So I have some catching up to do. So finally, some stats. These do count the manga challenge. So how many books did I read? I read 53 books because I did the 28 manga in 28 days challenge in February. I read 10,909 pages. So I read 6 books in January, 34 in February, and 13 in March. And I also thought it would be fun to give a stat of where those books came from. So 20 of those books were from the library, 18 were from my shelf, so books that I owned pre-2021. 6 were from a Patreon subscription or a magazine subscription, like The Dark Magazine. 7 were free gifts or borrowed, and 2 were 2021 purchases, so books that I spent my own money on. So I actually read more than 2 books that I received in 2021, but some of them are in the subscription category, so that category is a bit hazy. So that was my first Reads and Receipts quarterly. It was a lot of effort to compile all of the 3 months worth of books into one video. This is my first try, so let's see if I do this the same way or a bit differently in the second one. I don't know if listing all the books I read, like the ebooks and library books, is of any value, or if I just mention the few standouts, let me know. But my current physical TBR number is 65 books, and that's all from me for now, and I'll see you in my next video.